Hi, this is Amy and Michelle with Possibly.
Hi.
Hi. We are bringing you the Brave and Blissful workshop. Whether you are a woman in the corporate space or an entrepreneur, you are in the correct place. We help people develop a leadership mentality so you have a work and a life that bring you joy. We are so pumped to get started with you guys. Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I have been learning this stuff. I learned a lot of this stuff by trial and error for the last 20 years. I was thrust into a leadership position. I'm like, are they going to find me out that I don't know what I'm doing? Oh no. So a lot of that was trial and error, and all of these tools and strategies I've adopted through experience, through education, working with people, and just love to give back in that way. What about you?
My experience is much the same. So I found myself in leadership positions and I didn't know anything about anything and fumbled and bumbled my way to not screwing it up too badly. But it was pretty uncomfortable in the process. And part of what drew Michelle and I to working together and bringing this servant leadership stuff to life is if we can help shorten anyone else's learning curve, that would bring us great happiness. So this
Exactly.
is the first in a three-part series that we're going to present, and how to be persuasive in handling situations, balancing your needs, the needs of your team, building a team towards a common goal and a mission. So that's what we are all about. And Michelle's going to pull up some slides that'll help reinforce what we're talking about. But the goal is to show you the critical things. You need to learn how to best lead your team, lead yourself, have compassion and empathy, again, for yourself and others, and get things done. So
Exactly. You
that's what we're
ready
going
for me to bring this up now?
to.
Are we
Sure.
ready to dive in?
Let's
Okay.
do it.
All right. So this is us. This is us. Welcome. So what we're going to dive in today, like Amy mentioned, this is a three-part series, Brave and Blissful workshop, and all the things that she just covered. But this one is around motivation, if we were to package it in some way. So, what are we here to do today? We're here to handle the key questions, which Amy will get to in a minute, where those came from, and our creative learning out loud, which we love to do, be using creativity to learn together with other people. And then we'll dive into some of these questions that Amy will talk about, with how to ask the team for input, you're not doing it everything yourself. Well, hopefully not doing it everything yourself. Hopefully not doing it all yourself, which coming from someone who likes control and recovering from that, and then persuasive power. So these are all tied to the key questions. So I will just dive right into the next slide for you,
Thank
Amy.
you. Thank you. So Michelle and I, we lean into curiosity. So rather than thinking we have all the answers, we ask lots and lots and lots of questions. And I have a background in market research and consumer research, so I'm a complete nerd about it. And so we asked people what were their challenges, what were their struggles, and several things bubbled up. So we asked, folks that we've been helping. We were speakers at a conference recently, and we asked the people there, what's your biggest fear? What's the thing holding you back? And this is some of the items that kind of bubble to the top. So how do I motivate my team if I'm afraid I'm going to fail? And I think many of us can resonate with that one. Or what do I do to make time for myself and my team as a leader? Where do you find that sweet spot? And are there ways to encourage people even when things are tough, when the conversation is difficult? So we're going to tackle these questions and give you some ideas, some things to think about, some tools that hopefully will help you if any of these hit home for you.
And I love that these are real questions that came from people that are like, okay, this is what I'm struggling with. This is why I'm struggling with it. If you can field these questions and give us answers, I'm like, yeah, that's really useful. Useful, helpful.
Yep.
So let's go into let's dive right in.
Sure. So we don't think we have to have all the answers. We don't think we have to rely simply on our big, beautiful brains to, pull the rabbit out of the hat. So we lean into, frankly, being a little bit goofy, quite a bit silly, and creativity is our friend. So for me personally, I have found that poetry is a way that I can walk through really awkward times, feelings that I can't get myself out of, or those spiraling thoughts that just won't shut the hell up. I happen to use poetry as my vehicle. Michelle does some other journaling. We have some other people who do other things, but one of the things that we have on our website is poetry by several of us. And they often describe what feel like really personal moments, but are universal. So Jamie here, a quote from her "Don't F It Up" poem is to offer grace in each moment there is failure. And Michelle, do you want to kind of go into a bit more about failure?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of different thoughts on this, but some people think that well, I've heard the failure is not an option, which I don't know. I mean, I think failure is going to happen. Especially as we're learning or we're new to something. So, what we love about Jamie's quote is that we are giving ourselves grace to learn and fail forward. That's another term that I think is really common. Some people adopt this winning versus losing mentality. When I'm winning or I'm losing, or what about I'm winning or I'm learning? I'm winning and I'm learning. I could, I'm doing one or the other. So it's really important to know that you are going to fail. It's just how you deal with it and how you come through it. If you learn something from it. And, we're going to provide some examples today, but one of the examples that I have had in my past is opening a bit. We work with women that own businesses. We also work with women that are in the corporate space. So we'll pepper both of those examples. But in this particular example, I opened a massage therapy studio with my business partner over a decade ago. And little did we know, we opened our doors right before the downturn of the economy in 2008. So we had borrowed money. We both had liens on our homes, and we had zero customers when we opened our doors. And then we opened, and then the downturn took place in 2008. And I'm like lying awake at night. Am I going to make this work? How am I going to hire people? Or can I even actually put bodies on these tables for people to actually make money and for us to make money? So pretty terrified. And it took us 5 years to actually break even. But we did, and we came through it, and we failed forward during that process. So we want you to know that is actually going to happen, and you can be afraid to fail, or you can actually lean into it and learn from it.
Thank you for sharing that. And I can only imagine those sleepless nights, Michelle. That is terrifying.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So we'll keep going.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amy.
So this is related to question 1. How do I motivate my team if I'm afraid I'm going to fail? So Michelle's like, well, failing might happen anyway. So let's get back to motivating your team. So you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be the greatest leader that has ever existed and have all this magical skills to make everything work. You could, I don't know, ask. Michelle, you want to get into these examples?
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. I mean, I think that I just love the idea of asking for input. And I mean, I'll just read some of these, or add a suggestion box, for people to share their thoughts, have an open discussion, or lunch and learn for people to share. Invite team members to one-on-ones to learn, see what makes them tick, to really get at, what motivates them. But here's I love this story because it solidifies why asking for input is important and how we went about doing it. So if I use elements as an example, and that business that we created together, we we had an employee that wasn't holding muster. So he was the only massage therapy, only massage therapist on our team, male therapist. And we were letting him get away with a lot of stuff because he was the only male therapist. And a lot of people like to see, there's some people that just want to see a male therapist. So that's why he had a really long rope. But it was acting, his behavior was acting as a demotivator for a lot of our team. And we kept on ignoring it, trying to do other things, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain kind of thing. And it came to a head to the point where I actually had the dubious honor of having a conversation with him. And we decided that we would let him go. So I'm having this conversation with him, and I said, we're cutting you loose. And he pleaded, begged for his job. So I don't know how this idea came to me, but in that conversation, I said, you know what? If Jody is amenable to this, we'll ask the team. We will ask the team for their input. And he's like, what? You would? I'm like, if Jody's okay with it, yes, I will. So we then had a meeting that very night where we asked for their input, kind of like Survivor. We didn't tell them, they didn't have to raise their hands. They could actually vote yes or no, or they could abstain. They didn't have to if they didn't want to. But we told them the reason that we're doing this is we want to know, is this affecting your work? Is this affecting the team? Is there a problem here? We think it is, but maybe it's okay. And we've been wrestling with it and really struggling with it. We want to know what you think. And the tribe did speak. The tribe has spoken. The tribe did speak, and the tribe said, go, you got to go. And so he actually did wind up getting cut loose. So yeah, that's a really good example, I think, of asking for team input.
And obviously we can't Survivor out any toxic folks in our lives. But I think why I love that story in particular is what you were doing was involving the team in where the team is going. Their opinion was valued. I love the ability to be anonymous or abstain. And that individual knew that his fate was in the hands of his peers, and that it was a collective choice. It wasn't just mean old Michelle like picking on him kind of thing. And there's a lot of beauty in how graceful that creative solution was in figuring out how to motivate your team, because you said once that person was no longer part of the team, morale went up. Sometimes there is, just that bad apple that can spoil the whole group. So
exactly. So we like the examples. I mean, there's a ton of ways to solve that problem, but asking for input is important if you're trying to understand what motivates an individual and motivates a collective.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Cool. So the next, this is tied to the next question, right?
Yeah. So the question for this one, what do I do to have time for myself and my team? So I don't know about you guys, but I have been exceptionally good at saying, screw it, I'll just do it myself, overworking, becoming burnt out, becoming resentful. It's never been a great outcome for me personally. But that is the trope that I played regularly. I don't know about you, Michelle, but that was definitely something I would do.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I'm a recovering control freak. Once a control freak, always a control freak. That's a good question. I don't know. So I've actually grown in a lot of ways. And once you learn to delegate, oh man, it's exciting. It's exciting. You're like, oh, you mean somebody else can do this? And we can do twice as much or 3 times as much, however many people you have on team. So I think that it's interesting when you learn that you don't need to do it all yourself. You can gain time back, you can work together. There's trust that's earned amongst the team. I'll give an example in a minute as far as giving clear instructions, or QRG is quick reference guide. So that's what that means. So that's the example I'll use here in a minute. Or giving folks the chance to ask questions, right? What is going on? Ask me anything. AMA is ask me anything. So you can work together and solve things together by coming up with answers and solutions. And then following up if they don't know how to do something, or ask them if they need some help so you can show them. And for me, I mean, if we use my former business as an example, we had this team, and we were having a ton of turnover at our front desk. We couldn't keep people in that position. And so I'm like, you know what? I'll just do it. I'll take on more shifts. I'll work more hours. But as Amy mentioned, it leads to burnout. I mean, I did actually start down the path of taking on more shifts, and you get tired, and then you're not showing up for yourself, for your customers properly, for the people, for your teammates, all of that starts to fall apart. So we had to do something differently. And that's when we created clear instructions, quick reference guides. We use those cheat sheets to walk people through the training. So then they understood what to do. We hired based on that, did behavioral interviews, and worked with people to bring them on the team that had the skill set or were motivated to do what we needed them to do. And then we had, some balance. I wasn't burning myself out. The team was better for it. And I was able to get more time back. They were able to learn, you're delegating responsibility, and they're growing in the process. So there's so much goodness in how that can play in and all of these different tips. Do you have anything else you want to add to that, Amy?
I do. I was actually training on resilience with someone, and they gave me a beautiful example, a parenting example. They said, let's say you've got a kid and you ask them to load the dishwasher. I think everyone has a strong opinion about dishwashers, so this one might be easy to understand.
Forks up or forks down?
All the things, right? So this mom, she asked her child to load the dishwasher, and she gave herself a moment's pause because she had a pretty clear idea about how one properly loads a dishwasher. And she realized that if she fixed it after the kid, and if they ran it and the kid unloaded the dishwasher, you've undermined that kid's confidence and their ability because you went behind them and cleaned it up instead of following up and showing and setting the expectation and letting them learn it imperfectly until they get it right. That the way she described it to me was just, I thought, so beautiful, because I was like, oh man, I didn't think about that subtle back-ended negativity that can come from us cleaning up someone else's mess.
True.
Instead of taking the time to teach them, right?
I mean, I refold Jay's towels. Well, we all have a thing in our family about refolding towels. That's a whole nother topic. But it's the same thing.
Same thing. It's the same thing. And someone who looks up to you and is trying to learn from you, those little actions speak louder than you think.
For sure. So and like, so if I use a towel analogy, now he doesn't do laundry. I'm doing it because I'm controlling it. Oh, obviously this is still a growth area for me.
None of us are out of the woods yet. I love using someone else's example.
Oh man, that's funny. That's awesome. So we'll move on to the next question, or the next slide.
So this was question 3. Are there ways to encourage others even when times are tough or conversations are difficult? So leadership and power, they're interesting, right? So I think most of us are used to hierarchical relationships where there's someone who's like, a straight line and they get to make decisions and I have to do what they say kind of thing. But there's so many other ways that we can lead. And oftentimes those relationships are much more subtle or nuanced. And so rather than the traditional ways of do what I said because you have to, there's this whole other world of influential or persuasive power.
Mhm. Nice. And don't be thrown by the like some people think power and they're like, so influence. So persuasive power is also referent power. It's influence. So think of it like influencing somebody's behavior based on your own behavior and how you handle it. And they may not report to you. I mean, in some cases, you can do a better job by influencing other people in your work or your life if they're not tied to you in any way. Like you're not directly responsible for them as an employee, or they don't work for you in that way. So, we cover a few bullets here. It's like know your facts and do your research, aim to educate others, use SBI or the DREAD models, which we're going to use an example to walk you through that. And so, Amy, you want to go first with SBI and then I'll go with DREAD?
Yeah. So SBI is a tool I just learned last year, and I can't believe I've lived my whole life not knowing this. So SBI is a way to deliver feedback. So first, I learned that feedback is not something you give to other people to make them change their behavior. That's actually not the point of feedback. Feedback is if you picture yourself like a tea kettle with a lot of steam built up, feedback is a way for you to safely let the steam escape so you don't lose your ever loving mind. That is such a beautiful reframe of the word feedback, first of all. And then SBI is a process by which to give it. So I'm going to have a made up example and pretend I'm giving Michelle some feedback.
Awesome. Are you going to hit me with a pan? I hope. Okay.
So SBI, the acronym stands for Situation, Behavior, Impact. Situation is, think I'm a detective, I'm describing a time and a place. And behavior is observable. Anyone who could have been in the vicinity could have seen the action or heard the words. And you don't layer in and you were being a complete jerk and out of control. You take all that language and set it aside. And then impact is how I thought or felt in response to it. So I usually start soft. Hey, Michelle, I have some feedback for you. Is now a good time?
Yes, Amy. And then I do the, oh boy, okay.
Yeah. You can train your people, by the way. They start to know like, oh, you want me to pay attention? Got it. Okay. Yeah. So Michelle has said she's open. She could have said no and I could have walked away. It's fine. Hey, Michelle, last Tuesday around 10 o'clock when we were in that meeting and Bob said snow. And she'd be like, yeah.
Yep, I remember that time.
And then you took your fists and you banged them on the table and my water spilled. And that would be the observable behavior.
Yep.
I would say, I felt confused, a little bit scared.
I was terrified of you.
I thought I had done something offensive and I spent the rest of the day worried about it. And then I actually stopped talking at that point. And the beautiful thing at this point is that I feel better already. Even if she doesn't respond or she doesn't say anything, it's amazing. And I've found that a large percentage of the time, I completely misheard, missaw, or missed the context behind someone else's behavior. And this gives them a forum to then give me more perspective that helps me understand things differently. Or occasionally, sometimes they did mess up and they apologize and we're on the same page then, but it doesn't matter. The beauty is that I no longer sit around pissed off and just cranky about it and start to distance or start to behave in some sort of reactive manner to what could have been nipped in the bud in a very specific manner. So it's kind of a long story, but I love that tool. I use it professionally. I use it personally. It's been really helpful for me.
And so if we look at the bullets then, right? So you're anchoring to facts
Yep.
there in what happened,
Yep.
the situation. You're educating me about how the behavior that took place and whether I was aware of it or not and how you
Yeah.
felt about it. And I
Yeah.
didn't know, right? And that helps to influence how we work together in whatever capacity that may unfold.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. So that's one tool. The other tool is dread, and this is a model that we've used in a lot of different ways. The reason it's named dread is because most people dread dealing with conflict, dealing with difficult conversations. They can be hard. So this is a way to remember it and then also leverage the model for influencing how something goes. So D stands for define the problem. R is reframe the emotion. You can't remove it entirely because you're going to reframe it from getting you in trouble. Then you elicit facts, similar to Amy's, the model that she just mentioned. You assist and offer different solutions, and then you decide on a solution. And so this you could preemptively use this with the team to say, hey, we don't have any challenging conversations right now, but we're going to use this moving forward, that or SBI, just so then you can pull it out and say, can we SBI this? Or can we use the dread model? And then they're not like, what? So, or you could just do it individually and not necessarily take someone through it. There's a lot of different ways to use that. But if I use an example, I had a situation where I was working with someone and I was not responsible for this person. They were on the team. They didn't report to me at all. And that person was not doing what they needed to do. And it was impacting the rest of the team. And the rest of us are like, it's like pushing water uphill, pulling teeth, any number of terms you want to use. And then I had the leader. So I was not actually the leader in this particular case. I had the leader come to me and say, is that problem a person? Or that person is that problem person? Oh my gosh. Is that yeah, is that person a problem? What's going on there? And so I said, I didn't pull out the dread on her. I just used it. I said, well, let's talk about what's going on. I said, status reports aren't getting done. The documentation is not getting done. And the reframing of the emotion was, I'm a bit frustrated. Other people are frustrated. We're watching this. We're scooping up different pieces of it. And the facts are, this has been a problem for over a month, and it hasn't changed. We haven't solved this, and yes, the behavior is still in existence. One option is to piece off, and this is where I move into the A, right? So from elicit facts to assist and offer solutions. Just do nothing. That's always an option. You could just ignore it. Another option is to shove these different pieces to other members of the team. And another option is to remove that individual from the team. And she's like, I thought you liked working with a person. And I said, I think the person's great, but they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So she's like, well, what would you do if it were me? I said, well, I would remove them because we've already tried to move some of this work and it's not getting done. I would remove them and then we could hire somebody else that would work. And she goes, awesome, that's what's going to happen. So that's the full model using the DREAD and a tangible example to actually make it come to life.
I'm laughing because, Michelle, your examples make it sound like you just get rid of everyone.
I know it does. That was not intentional either.
I know, I'm teasing. But you know what?
So funny.
A lot of people are afraid to even look at making change because
Yeah,
it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't, right? So these are examples of big shifts that can happen for the greater good, but there's a million things in between. There's
right.
dealing with something that's not working over and over again. We've been doing this for too long. Just taking the time to peek our heads up and look at, is there another way that might
Exactly.
work better for the team and keep everybody motivated? That's the stuff we're talking about. The topic for this training was motivation. So you can see there's lots and lots of ways to get there. And sometimes
Exactly.
we have to get in the mud to get to the other side to a better outcome.
Yeah, thank you for that, Amy. So the bottom line is we want you to, like, if we go back, I'm gonna make you a little dizzy. So the key questions were, how do I motivate my team if I'm afraid I will fail? What do I do to have time for me and my team as a leader? Are there ways to encourage others even when the conversation is difficult? And, our intention has been to, and if we look at the agenda, the ask for input, right? That's one way to motivate folks, and delegating or not doing everything yourself. That would be another way to gain more time back. And then as far as that last question, which, whoops, sorry, I'm making everybody dizzy here. Are there ways to encourage others even when the conversation is difficult? That goes back to that influence and that persuasive power, and what we just covered as far as the SBI and the dread models. So I think that covers everything we wanted to cover, Amy.
I think so too. So, hope you guys got something from this. Please drop some comments. We want to make sure we're providing things that are helpful, useful, tangible. Help us grow and learn and be better at helping and serving as well. So, until part two.
Exactly. So this is one part of a 3-part series.
Yeah.
So then the part 2 will be coming shortly. So we encourage you to dive into that. Share this if you found it valuable. Pick out your notebook and scratch some notes and use this in your teams to act as a servant leader for others and lead yourself, even if you don't have a team, because this can apply for just working yourself through whatever it is you're doing in work and life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Until next time, friends. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.